Hey, how y'all doing? This is Mongo Slade, and today we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, Mr. Jim Ross, who apparently criticized the AEW roster for doing the exact same spot in every match. Oh my goodness, and we also got some responses from the AEW roster, but let's get right into it. So, this is from JR's podcast. I'm going to read a transcript from No DQ. So, This is the context. During the Grillin' JR podcast, Jim Ross asked if finishers like the super kick or the DDT needed to be protected, or if it's just part of the evolution of the wrestling business. And here was JR's response: that evolution of the business is bullshit. They should be protected. The DDT is a finish. The super kick is just part of the flow of the match now. Nobody's win with it. What does that say to you? Does that say guys like back in the day was more proficient delivering a DDT or a super kick than it is in this generation where, quote, things are evolving? I want some proof of that shit. I want somebody to prove to me that the changing of the wrestling business is what it is today, and it's making a difference. I say no. I told a kid the other day at AEW that everyone does the same fucking spot. All you guys go outside, you cluster up in coils, you stand there in a huddle, friends and foes together, side by side, so you can catch some leaping idiot going over the top who never wins with this move. They are looking for the holy shit chant. They love to hear this. It's awesome. It's a spot, folks. It's a trapeze act. I don't buy into that. The DDT is a great finish and should be used as such. Amazing. Amazing. Alright, so JR is 100% correct. Look, now, here's the crazy thing. I remember, it wasn't too long ago that a lot of people say, well, WWE just makes everybody wrestle the same way. Everybody wrestles the same way. The Performance Center just turns everybody into the same cookie cutter wrestler from WWE. Everybody's the same. And literally, just about every match in AEW is formatted the exact same way. There's at least 8 performers. I'll name them to you right off the top of my head. Mostly tag teams, where everything they do is the same. The Young Bucks, Private Party, the Top Flight, Hybrid 2. What is the difference between any of these groups other than their skin color and size? They all wrestle the exact same way. All of them. All of them do high-flying, flippity-doos. Literally, in the Hybrid 2 Young Bucks match, there was like 450 splashes. Okay, when people say, oh, WWE makes everybody wrestle the same, they are completely blind to the fact that in AEW, almost all of the Young Bucks matches are the same. It's completely nonsense. And yes, they all do the same spots. WWE does have people who repeat spots. For instance, the Tope Suicida through the ropes, and especially for a commercial spot, I hate it. I hate it so much. I hate it. But JR's big thing is, protecting finishers. Finishers need to be protected. I 100% agree with that. I do think that the DDT is a finish. I think the various variations of the DDT should also be a finish, like a tornado DDT. Now you see in WWE where there are DDT finishes. Alexa Bliss uses the DDT sometimes. When she was a couple of years ago, she used the DDT as a finish. The Willow's Bell, which is a DDT, hanging DDT, which similar to the one Randy Orton uses, is Tommaso Ciampa's finish. One of Tommaso Ciampa's finishers. A slingshot DDT from over the top rope is Johnny Gargano's finish. You got the rainbow DDT, or whatever the hell they call it, which is a cartwheel into a DDT from the top rope, is Jake Atlas's finish. But they just have gotten in the habit, and it's part of the indies. And to be quite honest, WWE kind of blew it out of proportion too, where guys just got in the habit of just throwing DDTs into matches as setups to other things, or a DDT to keep a guy down so you can do the people's elbow or something like that. The DDT has been completely exploited. It is useless as a finish. Unless you have, you kind of have to gimmick it up. Now there is the Paul Heyman thing. Paul Heyman, tells this story. Is a great psychological story that if you have Mark Henry beat guys with a headlock, and you're telling the story that he's the strongest man in the world and he has the most vicious headlock of all time, eventually people will come to recognize that his headlock at least is a finish. Similar to Lashley's full Nelson. Like, how many people have been in full Nelsons and have gotten out of them? But we have become conditioned over time is if Lashley puts you on a full Nelson, it's pretty much over. Okay? Now, that I like that JR criticized the AEW roster. And then they didn't like it. Of course, they didn't like it. So here's some of the responses. So, a few AEW wrestlers asked by the site WrestlingNews.co about JR's comments, and one responded with the following: "Look, I know there's a lot that JR can teach us, but burying us on the show or on his podcast is only going to make some of us ignore what he says. I grew up watching JR, and he's the best, and we love it when he calls our matches. But maybe find a different way to criticize the wrestlers in the ring. Everyone is doing what they have been taught. I agree that some things need to be slowed down, but that won't happen when the guy who is supposed to be help us get over is going out there and publicly burying us. Furthermore," it wasn't just him. Then you have Brandon Cutler. So Brandon Cutler is talking about the 7-on-7 match. And he's going to be on my TV for no apparent reason, dressed as a fucking dragon. Okay, do I really need to get angry after I was just so excited that JR is speaking some truth that I had to get mad that fucking Brandon Cutler is going to be on TV? All right, anyway. So this is what Brandon Cutler had to say. "This Wednesday, 7 versus 7. We're going to go outside, cluster up like coils, stand there in a huddle, friends and foes together, side by side to catch some leaping idiot going over the top. Can't wait. 8 p.m. TNT, hopefully for 1 million viewers. Let's effing go." So Brandon Cutler, the guy who only got a job because the Young Bucks is his friend, is sniping at JR. Let's keep to the point. I'm not gonna go off on a rant about Brandon Cutler and how useless of a turd he is. We're not gonna get into that. I will say this: I 100% agree with JR. I agree with JR that there's too much of the same stuff. I also agree with JR that too many moves have been bastardized. Now I think that it's definitely too late for the DDT and the super kick. But then again, we also have to talk about in wrestling a lot of moves that people do now used to be finishers, and now they're not. Like the Hurricane Rana used to be, or what they call the Frankensteiner, used to be a finish. Scott Steiner used to do it as a finish. They don't use it anymore. Something as simple as, a camel clutch used to be a finish. The sharpshooter. I see people using the sharpshooter all the time now. Fujiwara arm bars. There's a lot of moves in wrestling that used to be a finish, but now it's sort of a regular move. But what I think should happen, the spine buster is another one. I'm pretty sure you could think of 100 more. But what I really would like is for people to stop using the moves. What I mean by that is for some of these wrestlers to be assholes and say, I don't want everybody using the spear. If I'm going to use the spear, everybody else can't be using it. If you're Roman Reigns and you're going to be using the spear, why is it that why is Lashley also using the spear? Well, Lashley uses the spear too. It's a different variation of the spear, but he uses a spear. No, that's another problem, is that a lot of people have the same moves. Like if somebody's going to do a tope suicida, let that person do it. There's 100,000 other moves. Pick something else. Do literally anything else. If Io Shirai finishes a moonsault, then let her do the moonsault. Everybody else needs to go find something else to do from the top rope. If Bayley is going to do the flying elbow smash as a finish, and I said this before, just to be fair, I said I'm tired of everybody in WWE using the frog splash as a finish. Leon Ruff, Montez Ford, Rey Mysterio, Dominic Mysterio, and I'm pretty sure there's someone else. Sasha Banks also uses the frog splash. We don't need that many frog splashes. Okay, we don't need everybody using the frog splash, everybody using the super kick, everybody using the DDT, everybody using the Hurricane Ranas. We don't need it. We don't need that. Okay, I 100% agree. Now when we talk about the evolution of the business, let's talk about that for a moment, because there is something to be said about, moves have been bastardized to the point where they just aren't believable finishes anymore. Like a DDT. A DDT is just not a believable finish anymore. It sucks. But there's 100,000 different variations of the DDT now. So, there's I just gave you guys some new variations of the DDT that have been, either thought up recently or have been around for a long time, and they're not finishes. Well, some of them are finishes. But others are just moves to get out of other moves. They're transitional holds, you know? And that's just kind of how it is. And I think the easier the move is to perform, the more likely it is that people are just going to use it and bastardize it. And sometimes people see it as a tribute. You know, like they'll say, oh, well, this is a tribute to Bret Hart that I do as the sharpshooter. And you'll be like, okay, but it's not properly put on. It's not a finish. Your version of it sucks. Like, I don't see, like, it's not good. You know, it's like, it's hard to say, like, oh, well, this is my tribute to Shawn Michaels. Like, you use the super kick 300 times in a match. That, if you want to use it as a tribute, it should be a finish. Because that's really what it was. If you're going to tribute to somebody, use it as your finish or a secondary finish or something like that. Like, I'm not thrilled about Kevin Owens using the stunner. Now, I do remember Stone Cold Steve Austin said that, you know, when John Cena started using the stunner, you know, when he started doing the that little springboard stunner, that, you know, Steve Austin said that he didn't mind, but he just wanted people to actually get pinned with it. Like, don't just use my move and, you know, it's like a transitional hold or, you know, something like that. And I know Shawn and Undertaker and Triple H were laughing about, you know, how they've ruined the super kick. You know, it's like, these guys have noticed this stuff. You know, it won't be long. Like, you've already got, you know, 200-pound goofs out there using tombstone power drivers. It won't be long before there's, you know, small guys using choke slams and shit like that. It's going to be ridiculous, man. Like, this thing needs to be railed in a little bit, you know. But I do understand the whole evolution of the business thing, where once something has kind of been introduced, you can't really control it. You know, especially if the guy who is using the move is gone or is retired or something like that, you can't really control it anymore. Like the most protected move in wrestling right now is the one-winged angel. I mean, that's the most protected move in the business because nobody kicks out of it. And people seem to like that. You know, there's a lot of people who talk about it and they can't wait for, you know, Kenny Omega to put somebody over by letting them kick out of the one-winged angel. It's like, yes, that's how it works. So why don't you treat other moves the same way? You know, like, treat other moves the same way. Like, when I see people using the F5, I seen Wardlow using the F5. I was like, what the fuck is he using the F5 for? You're like, why? Why is he using the F5 as a finish? Whatever, man. You know, like, these types of things, put some thought into it. But it's like, it's that simple. Like, you can take a basic move, Chris Jericho spinning back elbow, you know, what we call it, the juice effect. It looks like shit. It's very simple. But if people stay down for it enough, it'll get over. You just have to allow people to, you know, you have to force it upon people that, you know, folks are not just going to be running around using this hold willy-nilly. Now, I do remember that sometimes that people are, you know, they get kind of itchy in the ass about it. Case in the point, Darren Young talked about how he was using the chicken wing, the crossface chicken wing, as a tribute to Bob Backlund. Because Bob Backlund was going to be his manager at the time. And then somebody walked up to him and says, you know, nix that whole crossface chicken wing thing. And then he was like, oh, well, I can perform it safely, and it's a tribute to Bob Backlund, who's going to be in my corner. And it was like, you know what, nah. And then he said you found out later that they actually took the move from him so that Asuka could use it. And that's hilarious. That's hilarious. But yeah, that's kind of how it should be. You know, only one of you need to use this hold. You use something else. Now, to be quite honest, Asuka could have used something else. I mean, this guy was using the move in storyline for a storyline reason, because he was literally going to be partnered with Bob Backlund. So he should have been one using the crossface chicken wing, but that's just, you know, WWE being assholes. But there is also the Tyler X story about the burning hammer and how John Cena claimed that it looks too much like the FU and wanted him to change it. And then he's told by other people that, oh, it's completely different. And, you know, John Cena barked at him because he needed to change his fucking finish or he's going to get fucking fired and all that other stuff. So there are some people who are really assholes about their finishes and stuff like that. And I actually prefer that, you know, and it's not just that too. because I've heard about, guys putting bans on color schemes. For instance, I remember I remember reading an article. Oh my god, it had to be over 10 years ago, about DX not wanting other people wearing green and black. Because I remember like it was a whole thing about Umaga wearing green and black, and they were like, green and black is like our gimmick, like you can't just like use our gimmick. I remember Taz recently did this same thing on Twitter when they AEW put up a happy birthday message, and it was orange and it was black and orange. And he tweeted like, of all the colors you chose black and orange. Like, but I don't mind that. It's like, yeah, it's asshole-ish, kind of. Like when DDP wanted Randy Orton to stop using a certain version of the diamond cutter. It's like, that's your shit. You have a right to be like, look, man, don't use my move. Please don't use my shit. Because once one motherfucker started doing it, all these other motherfuckers start doing it. Now, how many people use cutters now? Everybody uses cutters. Quote unquote cutters. The Ace Crusher, the RKO, the Diamond Cutter. There's 100, like the Lethal Injection. There's 100 different cutters now. What was it called? What's the Tower of London is a cutter. There's so many people using that move now. And DDP tried to stop one person from using it. There's nothing he could do when all these idiots on the indies are doing it. So that's kind of how it works, man. It's like, you can only try to stop people who are doing it on TV. You can't stop motherfuckers from doing it on the indies. That's the evolution part. That you can't stop the indies from bastardizing your move. You can only ask the guys on TV not to do it. Because them about the only guys you're going to have access to. But, the lariat used to be a finish too, but now it's not. Now guys barely even know how to throw a clothesline. I'm actually impressed by clotheslines sometimes because they usually look like shit. And this includes Kazuchika Okada, who has a clothesline finish, and it looks like shit. And I don't care what you say. Okada's clothesline does not look like it hurts. I've seen other people throw clotheslines that actually look like they hurt. Now sometimes guys start dropping or selling before the clothesline even makes contact. It is absolutely abysmal. I couldn't imagine you being in the ring with fucking Stan Hansen and you drop to the mat before he even make contact. It's retarded. It's ridiculous. Miro just did one on AEW where he clotheslined Orange Cassidy, but he barely even made contact with Orange Cassidy before this motherfucker did a somersault senton and landed on his back. It was absolutely stupid. It was dumb. But that's wrestling in the modern world, man. You can't protect shit. Guys don't know how to sell shit. They don't know how to take shit. They don't know how to do anything. And it's the fault of it's not entirely the fault of the people in the Performance Center or the ROH dojo or the New Japan dojo or anything like that. It's just that a lot of these people, no matter how you train them, once they get out on the indies, they're just going to start doing shit. And nobody else is going to stop them. So once they get on TV, they're going to think, oh, well, I'm just going to start doing my shit. I'm going to use a Canadian destroyer on a 300-pound man because I'm Adam Cole. Fuck you. Even if it doesn't make sense. Why would Keith Lee go forward with being flipped on his head by a fucking 5'8" man? Why would that happen? I've seen what's the name? P.D. Williams complained about the bastardization of the Canadian destroyer. He has a point. All right, these people have a point. You can't just be going around doing shit, but they do, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's the evolution of the business part, because you can't govern everybody. So when JR's like, I want to see the evolution of the business, he was like, well, you can ask certain people on TV not to do it, but what are you going to do when, again, to use the Jim Cornette line, these idiots over in these mud shows and these deathmatch fucks are doing it? When they're DDTing each other on Staples or some idiot shit like that, there's nothing you can do about it, because you don't even know what's happening. Next thing you know, everybody's doing it. That's just kind of how shit starts. Your shit bubbles up from the ground, just like, so it is what it is. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys for listening. If you like what I do, and the sort of the anti, unpolished work, a little bit more honest, take the $1 challenge, and I appreciate that. Thank you guys for listening, and I'll talk to you guys later.